All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for being with us here today. I'll introduce myself and the event, and then I'll hand it over to this great group of speakers we have. So I'm Daniel Van Hoekstratton, and today's event is hosted by Americans for Contraception. Thank you to the press on the line for joining to hear about this important issue and to hear from Cincinnati area residents about the importance of contraception, and Congressman Steve Chabot's dangerous vote against the right to contraception. Congressman Chabot voted no on the Right to Contraception Act earlier this year. That legislation seeks to enshrine protections for contraception in the wake of the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade. And I just want to mention real quick, we should make no mistake, with these anti-abortion forces emboldened by the Roe v. Wade decision, there are troubling signs that they have contraception in their sights. Just one example, Justice Clarence Thomas set the stage in his concurring opinion in Dobbs by suggesting that Griswold v. Connecticut, the case establishing a right to contraception, should also be overturned. We've seen these threats here in Ohio from Republicans in the legislature. So this is an incredibly pertinent issue and one that we're asking Congressman Chabot to reverse his position on. He voted no, even knowing that contraception is overwhelmingly supported by people regardless of their political party. Americans for Contraception is launching a advertising campaign in Ohio's first congressional district, holding Congressman Chabot accountable for his vote, and we'll be sending those ads to press soon. But we're here today to shine a light on his vote, the importance of access to contraception, and to demand Congressman Chabot reverse his position. So without going on myself, I'd like to hand it over to our first speaker, Erica Underwood. Erica, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much. So my name is Erica Underwood, and I am actually an attorney in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I really believe that this is an important issue, especially in light of what happened with the Supreme Court overruling Roe versus Wade. It's definitely kind of set the stage for the Supreme Court, which is a very super conservative court, overturning other protections in case law that has existed for decades. So everyone has the right to contraception. And there is another case, you did mention the Connecticut case. There's another case, actually, Eisenstadt v. Baird, that says that everyone has the right to contraception. And because of what the Supreme Court did in Roe versus Wade, I think it's super important that Congress pass some kind of legislation to protect that right. And that's exactly what the Right to Contraception Act would do. So no matter what the Supreme Court does, in overruling that other case, this would protect everyone's right to contraception, to plan their families, and to make other reproductive decisions. And I think that it's important for Congressman Chabot to remember that he represents everyone, regardless of who voted for him. He represents all of the constituents in his district. So he needs to keep that in mind and support the Right to Contraception Act. Just as an aside, I think that I actually had my oldest son when I was 17 years old. And I think that after I had my son, it was so important that I learned about contraception and that I had access to contraception and I had the right to make that choice so that I could complete my education and plan for my future family. And I think that everyone should have that right. So that is what I would have to say about the issue. And I thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Erica. And now I'd like to hand it over to Rebecca Dosseh. Thank you.
Thank you. So yes, my name is Rebecca Dosseh. I'm also an attorney and a political consultant based here in Cincinnati. I'm also an activist and an advocate for reproductive health and abortion access. And on a personal note, a child free by choice and a contraceptive user for over 20 years. So yeah, these issues are truly personal to me. You know, I'm the youngest of 7 children and kind of watched my mother throughout my childhood put everything else about her life on the back burner for decades while she raised us. And, you know, I don't want to speak for her and, you know, how she feels about those choices in hindsight, but from my perspective, it was sort of impossible to ignore all the ways that her path was determined by her decision to be a mother. You know, and from that experience, I learned at a really young age, both explicitly through conversations with my mom, but also implicitly that, you know, if you are capable of getting pregnant, the decision if, when, and how to have and parent children is the single most important choice that you're ever going to make in your lifetime. You know, and as an adult now myself, I see this pattern really repeating in my siblings' lives and the lives of my friends and peers. And my decision not to have children myself was based in large part on that reality. But, you know, beyond my own experiences, we have a ton of data to support the reality that, you know, earning potential, economic security, your professional future, physical health, mental health, whether you're able to break out of cycles of abuse or just, you know, chart your own course in your life. All of that really depends heavily on our ability to make these decisions freely and importantly, without interference from the state. We simply just are not free unless and until we have control of our reproductive futures. And, you know, although politics is my life's work, I want to be really clear, too, that, you know, access to birth control is heavily politicized, but it's not actually a partisan issue or even really politically divisive on its own. Something like 99% of sexually active women in the United States have used some form of birth control in their lifetime. And the approval ratings for support to access of all methods of birth control is something like 9 in 10 people. 9 in 10 Americans. And for those who don't typically follow public opinion polling on political issues like this, I can assure you that this level of support for almost anything is unprecedented. So when I see something so immensely popular among the American public that somehow can't get support from our representatives in Congress, that's really truly shocking to me. But here we are in this moment where access to birth control is at risk again. You know, we saw Roe v. Wade get overturned this summer. And like Erica mentioned, although the majority opinion kind of claimed that this decision wasn't intended to impact anything other than abortion, we know that the cases that led up to Roe, you know, included these sort of explicit access to birth control issues. And so dismantling that precedent puts everything that came before it at risk, including access to contraceptive care as a constitutional right. So here in Ohio, also, you know, our state legislators have explicitly stated, this is not reading between the lines, this is what they've told us, that they're open to banning birth control. And there's legislation already, you know, that has been introduced in Ohio that could impact access to IUDs and emergency contraceptives. So that door to banning birth control across the board is open in Ohio, and our state legislators are prepared to walk through it. You know, I don't want to be all doom and gloom and scare people about this, but I also want to be really honest about the fact that I am genuinely worried about what happens next in Ohio for myself, for all the people in my life who deserve the autonomy and the right to make these decisions themselves, and for my community at large. You know, I understand, you know, why people might feel kind of hopeless and helpless in the face of all of this, but it is really not too late to stop this from happening. So, you know, folks like Representative Chabot have time to change their minds and do the right thing for Ohioans. And I genuinely believe that we can make a difference on this issue by speaking up. You know, it's really imperative that Representative Chabot know that his constituents, myself included, simply will not stand for this. You know, and that as an elected official, it is his job to represent the interests of the people that he serves in Congress, and his refusal to support what is an incredibly popular measure is an abject failure of that representation. And I just think that he should have to, at the very least, answer for why he made this decision. So back to you, Daniel.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. And finally, I'd like to introduce Jagger Bieshler, a student at the University of Cincinnati. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Like you said, I'm Jagger Bieshler, a student at UC, a fourth year, and also the president of UC Democrats. And just to get started, politics aside, when I heard Congressman Steve Chabot voted to take away the right to contraception, I think I became worried by most students on campus. The right to contraception is overwhelmingly supported by Americans. And students all over campus is one of the most important issues to us. Recent national polling consistently shows that it's a 90-10 issue. And it's about time Congress actively fights for women's basic rights in light of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Unfortunately, though, 195 Republicans in Congress voted against the right to contraception. That's 96% of House Republicans. It's hard to get over that. In what world does Congressman Chabot think that's a good idea? Look, Democrats want you to have access to contraception, while Washington Republicans don't. And unfortunately, it's kind of that simple right now. Access to contraception is a right that must be protected. And in the wake of the Supreme Court decision overturning the constitutional right to an abortion, it's a growing threat has emerged that contraception could be next. The constitutional right to birth control is under attack by Congressman Chabot and Republicans in Congress, and is also being threatened here in the state level in Ohio. So basically, we're calling to Congressman Chabot to reverse his position. It's not only the right thing to do, but it's also the position of nearly everyone, regardless of the political party, and especially young people on campus. And thanks, Daniel, for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Jagger, and thank you to all of our speakers. If any press on the line have any questions, you can go ahead and type them into the Q&A, and I'll read them out to our speakers and they can answer them. But in the meantime, I'll just give some closing statements. I don't know if any questions will come up. I think the issue, frankly, is pretty clear. Congressman Chabot voted against protecting the right to contraception in the face of a real threat to contraception. There's no excuse to say, oh, that'll never happen, because it could. And at the end of the day, too, this is not an issue, and our speakers all touched on this, that is Republican, Democrat, man, woman. I mean, contraception is vital for people to plan their families. It's used by men and women, used by Democrats and Republicans, used for medical conditions, and also a constitutional right. So, as Rebecca said, we are calling on Congressman Chabot to reverse his position, and at the very least, he must answer for his position. So thank you all very much for being on. I don't see any questions. And thanks to our speakers for speaking up on this important issue. So long, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.